Today, I want to make an argument in three parts. So here's the first part of it. And that is, I think it's pretty clear that the Alberta oil sands are likely to expand production between over now the next decade, maybe 15 years. And part of that is might be if the uh, federal government manages to negotiate a deal with BC for a pipeline from Edmonton to Prince Rupert, maybe Burnaby. But, the Prime Minister keeps talking about making Canada an energy superpower in conventional energy, which means oil and gas. As Alberta Premier Danielle Smith said, he may not say the words, but what he really means when it is oil and gas expansion. And the only part of the industry that can expand is the Alberta oil sands. So that's the first part. The second part is, remember this number, $260 billion. $260 billion. It's a lot of money. And what it is the amount of unfunded environmental liabilities that are owed by or that would be needed to clean up the Alberta oil and gas's operations, to reclaim its assets. And there's a big problem here because what the industry has done, and this is common, across North America. Alberta is not the only jurisdiction, but back in 1938, when they created the first regulator, like every other jurisdiction, Alberta said, well, look, our priorities are keeping the industry healthy, attracting capital, creating jobs, providing revenue to the government, and the environment was way down on the list if it made the list. So what they did is they said, we're not going to take security at the beginning of an asset's life, like an oil well or a gas well. We're going to simply require the producer to reclaim them at some point. And there's no time requirement at all. They could, they don't have to do them X number of years after the well stops producing. They can simply cap them and go through the procedures to put them in the inactive well category. And so they said, we'll do that because we believe that the oil and gas industry is going to be around forever, and they can just pay for their past assets with future revenue. Well, what happened is, of course, is the industry very much gamed the system. And for example, a big company would sell its oil wells, its uneconomic spent oil wells, to a smaller company, and then that smaller company might sell it to another smaller company, which then would go bankrupt. Or if it didn't go bankrupt, maybe what it would do is just stop producing, and then it would stay on the books. And some lawyer would pay once a year to keep the company registered, and it would still be considered a licensee by the regulator. And right now there are 78,000 inactive wells that are just sitting there, and they're not ever going to go back on production, and they're not in the orphan well fund, and don't know what to do with them. So that's just an example. Then there's other assets like pipelines and processing plants and all sorts of things. That makes up part of that 260 billion. And on the oil sand side, you've got tailings ponds and all kinds of other big plant and infrastructure up there that at some point are going to have to be reclaimed. And as Dr. Andrei Sobolewski told me, he works in mining tailings ponds around the world. He said, no one on the planet has ever reclaimed an area as big as the Alberta oil sands in such a sensitive ecosystem. And they're just over 1,000 square kilometers at this point. So, 300 billion might turn out to be a very, very conservative estimate when, all the work is done and the bills are in. But it's a massive, massive problem that everybody winks at because it would take a lot of money from the oil companies to fix the problem that's accumulated over almost 100 years. And so better just to let sleeping dogs lie. Nobody's making a fuss about it. But if the industry at some point can't reclaim it, it will fall to the taxpayer to pay for it. So that's either the Alberta taxpayer and more likely the Canadian taxpayer, because no province can handle a $300 billion debt like that. So that's a problem. So the third part of this is that Canada now stands in a very unique position because, Carney is talking about making conventional energy part of his energy superpower strategy. And there's a lot of excitement around building at least one pipeline. But he now has leverage, and he should use that leverage to require that the condition of federal support for the industry in terms of building pipelines or building out the further production if they're just going to serve the U.S. Gulf Coast, be that they reform their liability management program and industry commits significantly more resources than it currently does. So right now it pays about $700 million. It's required by the Alberta government to reclaim assets, and then its levy that it pays to the Orphan Well Association is about $144 million. So if we round it up and call it 850 million, but it would take billions every year to get the work done. So if this issue is ever going to be resolved and those assets reclaimed the way they should have been years and years and years ago, then we need to do it now. And Mark Carney, you have an opportunity, you have leverage, you should use it to protect both the Alberta and Canadian taxpayers.